Hi, I'm Eric Stern. Welcome back to JUKEBOX Radio. That was Farid al Atrache's Noura Noura. Now, Farid al Atrache was a Syrian-Egyptian composer born in 1910, died in 1974, and he and Kulthum and Muhammad Abdul Wahab and others were the luminaries of what's known as Egypt's golden age of music, that time in the 1900s when the composers and performers utilized the classical Arabic music tradition and combined it with elements of the West, like orchestral arrangements and Western instruments like the violin and the accordion. So I'll put more about that in the links, but right now I want to talk about the structure. So right here, as you can see, I'm holding a map. And here is another map. Now, I know you might think it's an accordion, and when people see this keyboard, especially in the West, they think that this is music, that this is something that is handed down by God herself. But actually, this is a tactile, visual, and oral map of musical relationships. So what do I mean by that? Well, the smallest increment I can go on this machine is... Here we go. By what's called a half step. There's nothing less than that, right? I can't go somewhere between a white note and a black note. And even if you don't play piano or accordion, you can see these white notes together. That's a half step. Another name for a half step is the theme to Jaws. So there's your half step. This is a map of musical relationships, and for now all you need to know is we can't get lower or more smaller than a half step. I'm going to show you another map. This is an instrument called the guitar. Now, this looks completely different than the accordion or the keyboard or the piano, but as you can see, there are these lines here, and they are frets, and they also have the relationship of being a half step apart. Wherever you go, the smallest song you can play is Jaws. Now, it is true, you can bend notes because you've got strings here, right? So this pushes the bounds a little bit of that map that we have, right? Well, let me show you another instrument. This is the beautiful Turkish Saws. Now, where did I put my pick for it? Oh, there it is. So this is the Turkish Saws. I'll just give you, we can have a listen to it for a second. Beautiful, right? And as you can see, this also has frets on it. But listen to this. So far we've got the Jaws theme, right? What's called a half step. What happens here? That's not quite a half step, is it? Here's what a half step would be. Here's what I'm playing. That's right. There are notes that are lower and higher than these half steps. There are smaller increments than a half step. So I'll put it in context. That's the note. Versus it is again. Well, what the heck is going on? If you're from an Arabic-speaking country, or from an Arabic country, or from Turkey, there's nothing strange about that. But we in the West, we've developed something rather recent, actually, called equal temperament. And there are videos out there that explain all of that. I'm not going to get into that. But just suffice it to say that the way we have our piano, our keyboard, here it is again, with these half steps, that's relatively new. And actually, throughout history, there have been these other notes. I'm not going to say too much more about it for now, because this is Arabic music part 1. But in the song Noura Noura, now I've got a special accordion, and I'll put a link to it, that I made so that it can play these other notes. And this was not my idea to make it that way. That this is already, I didn't invent the idea. I just found out how to do it. So here would be our Jaws theme, right? But look at what I can do. And so that song, Noura Noura, uses that note. Here's how it sounds. Can you hear that? Versus, here's how it would be without it. Here's with. You'll notice that I put a lot of reverb on the recording as well. That's part of the actual style of the music, as well as putting lots of air in your playing. All right, so if that hasn't blown your mind already, I want to just put a little addendum to this talk about structure. And again, we'll talk about it more even next week, because there are some instruments, as you know, that have no frets at all, right? A violin, no frets at all. And when string players play, they adjust a little up and down sometimes, but in general, they use this kind of musical map. Just remember, there are other musical maps. If you saw a map, well, okay, I've exhausted the metaphor. Let me talk about Miss Good, because that was my music teacher in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, and she was wonderful. She taught at the Masterman School in Philadelphia, and oh my goodness, we learned so much. We learned all day, all night, Miss Marianne, down by the seaside, sifting sand. We learned this wonderful song. Que bonito bandera, que bonito bandera, que bonita bandera es la bandera puertorriqueña. I can still sing it after all of these years. She was such a wonderful teacher, and one of the things she taught us in 7th grade, because mostly we had just been singing these songs, but 7th grade we got a little more academic, and so I remember in my notes I was learning things about people like Blind Lemon Jefferson, Leadbelly. She was teaching us about the blues. I mean, how wonderful was that to be in Philadelphia at that time, learning about all this music from all over the world. I count myself so lucky. Thank you, Miss Good, if you're out there. So she taught us, when she taught us the blues, that enslaved people in this country and other places they were enslaved, they would take Western instruments and try to recreate the notes that were in their indigenous parts of Africa. In other words, they perhaps used some of these other notes that we're talking about. And that's not that surprising. After all, as I say, cultures all over the world have used other notes. Other is even sort of a Western-centric way of talking about it, right? But I'm going to say other relative to this one. So they've used other notes that are different than the scales we have. And so their approximation of trying to get these notes, or she called it a blue note, right? And so I'm going to take an E flat and an E and put them together, right? And there's the blues. crunching a couple of notes together. And again, what she said, that they were trying to create these notes, but she didn't go further than that. And interestingly enough, if you play the accordion with those notes instead of crunching them, listen to me, it sounds African. So I'm going to play that note, but instead of crunching them together, I'll play the actual note because I can on this accordion. Here we go. There is some scholarship, and it's not all fleshed out, and it's a little bit controversial, or at least they're just not sure. And I'll put a link to that too. But the Muslim Empire had conquered northern Africa, and so there was a lot of Muslim influence in African and West African. And there is some scholarship saying that people that were enslaved from Western Africa came over to the States, and the field hollers that you can read about, listen to all those Alan Lomax recordings and stuff, but the field hollers were actually based on Quranic chants that used, again, some of these notes. Isn't that incredible and interesting? Wow. So I'm going to play a little bit more of this accordion just so you hear these notes now. Now, to some of your ears, that might seem, I've heard people say it sounds sour. It's certainly different than what we're used to in the West. But once you start to appreciate this, these other iterations of music, your ears expand, and there's more music that you can appreciate. So next week, I'm going to show you another map. This map also has no frets. So we'll be back with part 2 of Arabic music, the oud, on JUKEBOX Radio. I'm Eric Stern. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.